Bob Burg is a go-giver. But what exactly does that even mean? Well, we're going to find out today on the 88th edition of the 1004 show. Super excited for you guys to tune in to this episode. As always, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your day. Bob Burg has written, a lot of books. So many that I can't even count them all. But his latest book is the GoGiver Influencer. And it really talks about this influential kind of movement that's going on and how you or the brand that you're working on can influence others. Talk about selling. This is something crazy that I learned about Bob. He has spoken in front of 16,500 people. Wow. And I asked him the question, what does someone not know about Bob Burg? And his answer is probably going to shock you. And his greatest kind of social media technique he has over 100,000 Twitter followers. That number one thing, what do you think it is? Don't just broadcast, also engage with your following. It's episode 88, the Dale Earnhardt Jr. edition. Not a NASCAR fan, but that was kind of funny. The Des Bryant edition, the Michael Irvin edition of the 1004 show with Bob Burg. Let's get into this episode. Bob Burg, 88. What is a go-giver?
Well, a go-giver is someone who understands, who has learned, or maybe always intuitively knew, that shifting your focus, and this is really the key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing value to others. And that doing so is not only a nice way, a pleasant way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. So there's nothing about this that's particularly meta or anything or magical or mystical. It's basically very logical, because when you think about it, nobody is going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, and they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person who believes in what you do. Can you believe? Well, I know, yeah. They're going to buy from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so, which is the only reason they should buy from any of us. And what that does, what this shift in focus does, is it creates the context where we, the salesperson, we, the entrepreneur, we know we need to place our focus on them. We need to focus on bringing value to them. That must be the focus. And as we like to say, money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning. But it always comes because the focus is on providing value to them, not being focused on the money itself.
So what is value then? How do you define a value?
Value can be defined as the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to someone that they will willingly exchange their money or time or energy, what have you, depending upon the situation, but in this context, exchange their money for that and be glad they did, while you also make a very healthy profit.
You have something that I believe I also have that's good, and that's a good sounding voice. How have you leveraged your voice to get in front of more people to then be a go-giver?
Well, I started out in radio, then got onto TV. I was a broadcaster, though people kept saying I have a great face for radio, a better face for radio than TV. But it turned out I wasn't really particularly good at either of those. And I like to say I graduated into sales. And but as far as using the voice, I mean, I don't think it's so much having a good set of pipes, as they say, that helps, but it's not enough. I mean, you really have to be able to not only have a message, but to be able to communicate a message that, again, brings value to others. And we talked about what value is. One thing we always have to remember, and this is so important, is that value is always in the eyes of the beholder. So it's not what we think we have that's of value. It's not what we think others should think is of value. It's what the marketplace determines to be of value, especially in the basically free market economy in which we live, where no one is forced to do business with one another, right? You've got to focus, you've got to bring value to them as they understand it. And as Harry Brown used to say, profit is nothing more than a reward for the value you bring another human being.
Well, Harry Brown was a smart man. So how do you, knowing that value is in the eyes of the beholder, I believe is what you said. So how do you quantify that? How do you know if someone is actually getting value? Because so many people, even on the internet of the world today, are not necessarily liking, loving, or consuming or engaging in content, even though they might be consuming that content. They're just not showing you that they're consuming that content.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's take this on a couple of different levels. On a one-to-one level, you find out what this person values by asking questions, by not assuming that you know. See, as human beings, we subscribe to a certain to certain beliefs. Okay, I call it your belief system. Your belief system is a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, everything that we're exposed to. But our belief system was given to us basically as kids. And by the time we're a little more than toddlers, our basic set of beliefs has already been set. Most of us grow up, we live our lives not even understanding that we are controlled by a set of beliefs that an unconscious operating system, I call it, that we're not even aware that we have. Well, it's the same with everyone else. And on top of that, we all believe that the way we see the world is basically the way everyone else does as well, which is only natural. How could it be anything else? It's all we see. But it's not true, because we all come at it from our own different beliefs. And the only way we can discover another person's what they find to be of value is to ask questions and listen. And I mean, really listen, not just to kind of hear, not just so we can come back with something that's going to help, close the deal. I mean, listen with the back of your neck. I mean, have your whole being in it, trying to really discover what it is this person holds to be of value. Once we do that, now we can match the benefits of our product or service with what they need, what they want, what they desire. That's one-on-one. Online, now we have a different issue. So now, online, sure, we can still, and by the way, this is why it's so important to engage with people on social media, not just broadcast to people on social media, because you can gather lots and lots of information. But there's a lot of times that you'll put something out there, okay? And you need to gauge the feedback of the marketplace in general as a whole in order to know what is and what isn't working, or what they are seeing of value. Can I give you an example of this that I think was one of the biggest mistakes I made?
Please.
The GoGiver comes out and just, does really, really well. And so we follow that up with a parable. And we name the John David Mann and myself, my awesome co-author, and we name the parable, It's Not About You. Because that's sort of one of the messages in the third law of the GoGiver, the law of influence, placing the other person's interests first, not in a way that's self-sacrificial or martyrish, but in a way that obviously, as we're talking about, it's got to be about them. So we figured people would just get this, right? I mean, it's not about you. Perfect title. People who love the GoGiver are going to just eat that. They stayed away from the book in droves. And for about 2 years, and the story itself was on the level of the GoGiver. So the people who read it, great feedback. We knew that wasn't the issue. So we just kept asking. We kept asking and asking and asking. And finally, we got the answer that we felt was right and kind of turned out to be. And that is the title, rather than being something that the marketplace embraced, was something that totally turned them off. Think about it. The book is called It's Not About You. So first, if it's not about me, why would I want to buy it? Okay, that's a message that goes through their head. But here's the other thing. One of the reasons the GoGiver sold so well is because it was given as a gift book to people. And you could give a gift book called the GoGiver, and the person takes it as a compliment. But how do you give someone a book that says, "Hey, it's not about you"? You might as well give them a bottle of mouthwash, right? It just so we did something that is we asked the publisher. We have a great publisher, and not many would have done this. We asked, can we change the title of this? Can we change it to what it should have been, the GoGiver Leader, which is what it really was about? And they let us do it, and we fixed it. We also did a couple of minor adjustments in the story, but nothing significant. The GoGiver Leader is selling great. Okay, it's
so
not about you.
You changed the name and everything turned on.
Change the name of it. But what happens? We listen to the marketplace now. But what we didn't do at first was we should have put ourselves more in the position. We should have put ourselves in the mind of the market. And we should have, in retrospect, right, hindsight 2020, we should have known that wasn't a good title, but we didn't. We made a mistake. But once we just kept asking the marketplace and we found out, we determined what it was, now we were able to course correct, and it's a whole different story. But that's really, that's what you've got to do.
It's really interesting, and I'm actually going to do a Facebook Live on this topic today, and it's this thought of retirement. And people believe that retirement is such a bad word in a sense, and where we are trying to just push through and make something work instead of just retiring something and figuring out something new to happen. And ultimately, that's what you did with this, is you retired that book title, even though the content was exactly the same, and you said, you know what? This isn't working. We need to maneuver this. We need to change this so that it will work. And so I appreciate that you said, you know what? Like, this content's really strong. We're really going to help people become the GoGiver leaders, right? Or leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. GoGiver leader. Yeah.
And if we don't change this, we're going to continue to be in this black hole, right? And so why do you think so many people are so afraid to retire something or to figure out that maybe this isn't going as well as we want, but we could tweak it, or just completely give up on it?
It's a great question, and it's hard to say. Of course, it has to do with the human mind and with human nature, because everything does have to do with the human mind and human nature. Is there an ego issue they don't want to admit, or I don't want to admit, or we don't want to admit that we messed up? Could it be an emotional thing where we're really attached to that title? John and I love the title. We thought it was great, and so, but it's not about us. And so we were able to let that go. Who knows? And maybe there's that thing. Is it admitting defeat? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that course correction is a very necessary part of business. We, as the saying goes, we need to be strong on principle, firm in principle, unchanging in principle, but flexible on strategy, certainly.
That's good course correction. What are you afraid of?
Aside from heights?
Yeah. Where do you live?
I live in Jupiter, Florida.
Okay. So there are a lot of skyscrapers or anything there?
There are some. I mean, as you get closer to Miami and some of that. But no, it doesn't seem to be something that's going to really, and I don't get on my roof too much. So no, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But I would say, I speak on stage still. I'm doing it less and less now, but I still speak on stage, and I still get nervous every time. I feel a real responsibility when I'm on stage to bring value to an audience.
Because people paid money and you want to,
Yeah. And whether it's an audience of 50 people or 15,000 people, I feel that same responsibility, and I feel the same kind of nervousness in my stomach. Now, once I get up there on stage, I'm fine, but I still have that feeling. And if I'm in a talk and I don't kind of really feel that connection happening, I start talking to myself, and I think we all go through, maybe not all, but I think most of us go through that.
I do a bit of speaking myself, and I still get that feeling. And it's kind of the same reason, right? It's like, these people are here to see me or get this value, and if I cannot provide that to them, I've done a disservice to them. And I want to make them get it. So 15,000, is that the most amount of people you've spoken in front of?
I think 16,500.
Wow.
Was I think the biggest.
Where was that?
That was at the Fleet Center in Boston.
Wow. Was that one of your programs? Were you speaking on someone else's?
No, I was speaking on someone else's.
What was that like?
I like it. It's fun, but I also like the small audiences, the small, very intimate audiences. But the big ones are really fun in the arenas and so forth because there's a certain energy that that there is, and you can really pick up on that energy, and those are fun. So yeah, I like the big and small ones.
Was there an aha moment or like a hockey stick moment where something that you had been working on, a campaign, maybe it was the first book, but it just seemed like you were just trickling along, and then finally it was like, phew, and then you got a lot of exposure from, or you got a lot of business from, or something like that?
Well, about it's probably 15 years into my career, my speaking career, is when John and I wrote the GoGiver. And once that came out, that took my speaking career to a whole different level. I'd had other books out, and I'd had a successful speaking career for quite a while before that, and it was always, it was pretty incremental. Uh, None of my books had ever been books that I got steady calls on to come in and speak. I would use the books as proactive marketing tools. I'd use them proactively, but never did I. But it was after the GoGiver came out that I started getting calls from companies that said, we've used your book throughout the company. We'd love to have you come in and speak. How much do you charge? Blah, blah, blah. Those are fun. I like those. And the career got a little even more fun after that.
What's the most you've ever made from a speaking gig on something like that?
Well, my speaking fee's 25,000. So that's what I get.
There you go. So you go from radio to TV to then you called yourself a professional salesman. Is that the word you used?
Yeah, sales professional. Yeah.
Sales professional. Where you went to school for radio journalists?
The school I went to was a very, very small school. So they actually didn't have a communication major. So I was officially an English major, but I couldn't tell you what a split past participle or anything like that is. I always said I was not a good student in high school or college. I always said I got into college on probation, which is no big deal. A lot of people do, but I graduated on probation. I mean, I was really bad. My education didn't really start until after I got into sales. And that's when I began reading not only the sales books by the experts like Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar and the other greats at the time, but you started to see where personal development itself was a big part of sales. So that's when I began reading Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People and The Magic of Thinking Big and As a Man Thinketh and Psycho-Cybernetics, and just all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. And it was this, wow, I just loved the personal development aspect of sales.
Do you think that education is misleading in a way, where like the school systems that you have to go through, where they're like, this is the path that you have to go through, when it sounds like you and I actually have very similar paths where, it's like, I didn't do well in school. I did okay in college when I found that thing that I thought I was good at. But like, it's like, once you figure out what that, I don't know, occupation or career that you want to go into, you want to deep dive and be super educated on that. And you want to learn from that. But that's not the way that we're educated.
Well, I think that by the very nature of how it's put together, I think the public school system is very problematic. That's not to say there aren't many great teachers who dedicate their lives to teaching their students, but it's the system itself. It's basically, without meaning to get too political here, it's a very socialistic system. I mean, it's basically controlled by the federal government. I mean, I'm not trying to, I'm just saying that it is what it is. It's controlled by the federal government on one hand, who is they themselves controlled by the teachers union on the other hand, and it's not for the students as much. Again, that's not to take away. There are many great teachers who have devoted their lives to helping the students, but it's very difficult for these teachers to work within that kind of system. So I would like to see a much more free market approach, or at least very much more of a more local approach to education, because the customers are the students and their parents. And when there's no competition, not competition among the students, and that's not what I'm talking about, but competition among the schools to win the business of the students and the parents, then I think it's problematic by its very nature.
I just think I find it interesting that once you get out of school, you started reading all these books that you were really intrigued by and have been able to create an amazing life for yourself, where in school they probably thought you were going to be the kid that didn't do anything.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. On the day I graduated high school, I remember my guidance counselor, and he was a very nice man, but I remember him coming over to me and saying, Berg, I can't believe you're even graduating today. Because it was that close, right? And again, he was a nice guy. But I was a lousy student, and I don't blame. It wasn't a great comment for him to make, to a kid, but I don't blame him for making that comment because I can understand where he was coming from.
Sure. Let's transition to selling yourself. So many people are terrified to sell themselves. What are some of the reasons why you've seen through the decades of experience that people are limiting themselves when they should be kind of being proactive with selling themselves?
Well, in a sense, it goes back to how a person defines selling. And I think many people define selling as something, or they think selling is something that, where you try to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need. And that, of course, is not selling. That's called being a con artist, right? Selling, by definition, is simply discovering what the other person does want, does need, does desire, and helping them to get it. The Old English root of the word sell was selan, which meant to give. So when you're selling, you're literally giving. Now, someone might say, well, wait a second, isn't that just, clever semantics? Well, I don't think so, because when you think about it, when you're in front of someone and you're in a selling situation, what are you giving them? I suggest you're giving them time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and more than anything, you're giving them value. When you look at selling like that, now you see it as a good thing. I can't, and I've written about this before, that, people, sort of a new way of trying to teach sales. Sometimes they'll name their articles or even, books sometimes, sell without selling, right? Don't sell, serve, and all these things. And if you go to the basic premise of that, what that's saying is selling is not a good thing. Do something aside from selling. Now, what they mean is don't be stereotypically selling, okay? But when they say don't sell, serve, or sell without selling, to me, they've created a premise which people have been buying into for far too long instead. And I don't mean to diss anyone who is saying that or writing it. I'm just saying I disagree. And hey, I'm not necessarily right. That's just my opinion. But so if you look at selling as something that's positive, now you can sell yourself a lot easier. That said, it can still be, by its very nature, difficult to sell yourself. Sometimes easier for someone else to be able to sell you. You can edify and brag about someone else, and it's okay. You can't really brag about yourself, because if you do, then you're someone who's just bragging about yourself. So you've got to be able to do it in a way that you sell yourself. I'm not sure if this is the right word, but indirectly in a way, and again, you do that through content. You do that through engaging with people. You do that through asking the right questions. When you sell yourself, you don't make it about yourself. And I think that's another key. To the degree that you can make the process about the other person, that's really how you sell yourself.
You're talking about when you're talking with people, figuring out their pain points or some of the challenges that they go through. Oftentimes I find that people aren't really getting to the core of what their problem is, or they think it's one thing, but it's actually something completely different. How do you, through some of your communications with people, or when you're interviewing people or consulting, how do you really figure out what that core problem is? And if it's different than what they thought it was, how do you convince them that it's actually that thing instead of the other?
Well, okay. So this has a lot to do, the questions you would ask have to do with what you do for your work and who your market is. And that's why it's, while all individuals and while all customers and clients are different, basically, by and large, if you're doing it correctly, you have that, for lack of a better word, avatar of who your client is. My friend Anthony Iannarino, wonderful author, and speaker. He wrote a book, The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need, and it's a couple others. He's brilliant. The sales blog is his blog. He's great, but he calls it your dream client, right? If you've done your job well, you have that you know who that client is, right? And you have a good idea what their problems are. Again, that doesn't mean you don't have to ask, because people are individuals, and as you said, they may perceive their challenges and problems as different from what they are. But if you have a good enough idea of your avatar, of your whether dream client or your niche client or what have you, you should be able to go in with the questions that are going to help elicit their giving you the answers.
Very cool. You talk about not just broadcasting, engaging with people, specifically on social media. What have you done to get north of 100,000 Twitter followers?
Well, I have built that very organically. Certainly I haven't bought any list or anything like that.
Right.
It started at zero and just kind of little by little. So what have I done? I have engaged a lot. Something. I wish there was something else I could say.
So what's
there really isn't.
What's an example of engaging then?
Well, okay. So if someone comments about something that I've posted, if someone retweets, I make sure to thank them. Now, at this point, there's so many, I can't thank everyone personally as I was when I was first starting, but I collect them all, and there'll be 10 of them, and I'll put them in a tweet, say thank you for your kind retweets. I do it every single time. If someone makes a comment on a blog post of mine, I answer it back. If someone tweets about something on one of my tweets, or they tweet about me or one of my books, I thank them every time. I have the search set up on Twitter so that anytime either Bob Burg, the GoGiver, Endless Referrals, or Influence will have that up soon. Anytime someone mentions it and my book's up there or my name is mentioned, they get a thank you. And I can't tell you how many people have commented about that. And I do the same on LinkedIn. I do the same on Facebook. I do the same on Instagram. Does it take some extra time? Sure. But that's where a lot of my people are that are my buyers and so forth. And it's congruent with my values. I wouldn't feel comfortable not thanking people, right?
Well, and imagine that social media, which is a two-way street, right? I guess it could be two, but a two-way street, and you guys actually communicate with each other. And all too often people, even simple little things like, hey, thanks for responding to this. I'm like, this is my job. Like, why would I be on this social media platform if I'm not going to do what you want me to do? Like, you have engaged with me, I'm going to engage back. Like, that is literally what these platforms were built for. And these brands that don't do that, I'm like, are you a moron? Like, you're literally missing out. Like, they're raving fans in front of you, and you're not doing anything, but you are, and so I commend you for that, and I appreciate that. That's how you and I connected.
That's right.
Chad Stenzel did a direct message between the two of us, and here we are. And so
Chad's a great guy. I have so much respect for him.
He will be so excited to hear that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, you talked a little bit about the medium in your kind of early career was maybe wrong, but the vehicle was always there. You getting that message out to people was something that was so important. And I think a lot of people are using or maybe on the wrong medium, right? Or they go down this path and they're trying to deliver on something that is what they thought they were supposed to do, but that medium might be wrong. And so if someone is maybe in the right industry, but on the wrong platform, mm-hmm. what could they be doing to get on the right platform or find the right platform so that they can succeed?
Well, when you say platform, what are you referring to?
Well, so like when you were on radio and TV, you were good at those things, but it wasn't really truly what you loved. And I think now what you're doing is what you really truly love.
Right.
And so
I got you.
You're still basically doing the exact same thing where you're talking in front of people, you're broadcasting, you're helping them, but that medium has changed.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah.
Zach, I think it comes down to anything else that we want to do something that we love, obviously. And we need to connect that thing we love with what we're also good at or can become good at. And then the third part is we have to have a market for it or be able to develop a market for it. there's a saying that, follow your passion or do your passion and the money will follow. It's true, but it's not complete. If you follow your passion, the money is only going to happen if you have a marketplace for it. Otherwise, it's a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with a hobby, but that's not going to make you a living. Now, there's something that's started to come up as a way of thought on the opposite end now, and that is this thing about following your passion is ridiculous. Do the work and you'll become passionate about it. I disagree with that too. I think it's just taking it from the other side, and it's being an either or instead of an and. It's a treacherous dichotomy or a false dilemma, the unnecessary use of the word or. No, of course, why wouldn't you want to do something you're passionate about? Of course, we're made to do what we're passionate about. We're typically given abilities to do something we're passionate about. It's just finding the way to tie that in. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be third baseman for the Boston Red Sox. That was my passion. I had no talent, so that wasn't going to happen. But had I really wanted to pursue it, I still could have pursued a career in Major League Baseball. It just would have been in management or leadership as opposed to, on the field. I mean, there's always things we can do. But if you're going to live a life, I mean, do your best to enjoy what you're doing at worst, at best, to be just so passionate about it that you absolutely love it. But again, that doesn't mean you can just rely on that. You've got to connect it with a marketplace that's either there or one you can develop. So I'm always a little bit when I hear, both sides, as though either side has the answer, right? Either passion is everything or passion is nothing. And no, it's very important. It's just not everything.
Sure, I love it. GoGiver Influencer. It's the new book.
Yeah, the GoGiver Influencer.
So how many books have you written now?
I think I have about 11 altogether.
Okay, are you going to get to a baker's dozen?
I don't know. I always say this one's my last one, and then, I do another one.
So this is your last one at this point?
It is. It is.
What's the genesis of it? Of the book. Why write
of
this
the book
one?
Itself? Why write? Yeah. Well, every one of our GoGiver books, John David Mann's and mine, has had influence as part of it. In the GoGiver, the original one, Law 3, was the law of influence. Okay, and then the GoGiver Leader was about both leadership and influence, and this one is just focusing on influence. We kind of felt the time, and influence has become now such a word, almost a buzzword, that almost can lose its meaning if you don't really have it defined the correct way, I guess you could say. But it really is important because influence is pretty much everything when it comes to accomplishing what you want, accomplishing what you desire. Nothing happens without influence because life is about bringing other people into your journey. I mean, it's just not going to happen without it. So what is influence? Well, on a very basic level, influence can be defined as simply as the ability to move a person or persons to a desired result, usually within the context of a specific goal. That's the definition, but I don't believe that's its essence. I believe the essence of influence is pull as opposed to push, as in how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not really far, or at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers don't push. You rarely hear someone say, wow, that's Susan or that David. He is so influential. He has a lot of push with people. He is just the pushiest guy you've ever seen. It's great, right? No, you don't hear that. You say he's influential. He has a lot of pull. And that's what I believe influence really is. It's an attraction. Great influencers attract people to themselves. They do this through pull, not through pushing themselves or their ideas onto others. And I think the greatest influencers, on a gut level, on a heart level, I think they tap into what I believe was Dale Carnegie's underlying premise in his classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, where he wrote, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So the most effective influencers are constantly asking themselves questions and checking their motives. How does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their needs, their wants, their desires. How does what I'm asking this other person, how does what I want this other person to do align with their values and with what they value? And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning their commitment to our idea as opposed to depending upon compliance.
So what are some of the things, words, phrases that you use to get that first attention or that credibility in what you do? Do you say like 11-time author? What are some of the phrases or words that you use to kind of gain that initial credibility from someone who hasn't heard of you yet?
Is there a word that we use? I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I think it's all part of I think it's all part of everything. I mean, you put something out there, you put an article out there, and you put it on a platform that hopefully is going to get read. And at the end, you have your bio, but it's got to be that information that grabs their attention. Then they're probably going to look at it, and then they're going to say, who is this guy? And is this person worth going to their website? And when they get to the website and they see the little, the information there, then the invitation to read the special report, endless prospects, the GoGiver way, boom, is that something they're going to now want to go into? Yeah. So you just don't know. But so I don't know if there's one word that I say that, that's going to attract someone.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
How do you stay happy?
Well, I think you focus on gratitude. And that's something that for many years I did not do well at all. That was part of my self-improvement program when I think I was about 35 years old. And while I had gained a measure of success in my life in terms of business-wise, I realized that I was really at 35 years old not very happy. And I realized that I was doing a lot of things that were counterproductive in my life and counterproductive to others, and I needed to make some changes. And I remember one of my mentors, Charlie Tremendous Jones, who was one of the old all-time great, speakers, and he served as a mentor to me for a while, an unofficial mentor, just a great guy. But I remember him sending me a book, and because he was always sending me books, and in the back of the book there was a chapter that talked about a book written by Benjamin Franklin called The Autobiography. And in this book, Ben Franklin, who realized that at a very young age, he had some character traits that were not serving him and were not serving others and were not going to help him become successful. So he put himself on a self-improvement program called The 13 Virtues. Well, I got Ben's book and I started doing that. And it made a humongous difference in my life. And my first trait was gratitude. Because when you don't live in gratitude, it basically means you're focused on what isn't good in your life. And the fact is, there's a lot of good in our lives. Life is tough. Life has its ups and downs for all of us. But where we put our focus is what's going to resonate in our mind. And my focus was always on the bad. And I retrained my brain, and gratitude became a huge part of my life. And from the moment it did, I became happy.
I always find it interesting how a lot of people are only thankful on Thanksgiving.
Right.
So that word gratitude makes me think of that too. What's something about Bob Burg that most people don't know about?
Oh, I'd say that I'm very, very much an introvert.
So were you nervous doing this conversation today?
No, it's not that, because I don't find doing an interview incongruent with being an introvert. It just means being introverted really means that I just assume not be out in a crowd. Now, if I'm speaking in front of a crowd and I'm getting paid a lot of money for it, that's a whole different thing for me. Okay, there's an energy there, and I'm it's a safe space for me. I feel very comfortable with it. I wouldn't be comfortable in a crowd of 1,000 people walking around. It would sap my energy. You know what I'm saying? But being introverted really means I derive my energy more from being by myself, or maybe with a few people. But but I enjoy conversations. But so it's not something that in and of itself would make me nervous doing an interview. But people are kind of shocked when they hear, because I'm a very friendly person, and when I'm out somewhere, I'm always, smiling, saying hi to somebody. I'm very friendly. I just would rather, given the choice, I'd rather be in my cave as opposed to, out.
Sure. I could have understood if you were nervous. I mean, I'm a pretty big deal. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You are.
I'm kidding.
And I was nervous, but just
go,
not from being introverted.
So, what's something that you have not done yet in your life that you want to do, or something that's on your bucket list?
Well, I'm really I'm learning Spanish to speak fluently, which is something I've always wanted to do and never took the time to really do it. So I recently, about half a year ago, almost a year ago now, I bought the Pimsleur course. And I'd had some experience. It's an audio course that you listen to in your car. Several years ago, when I spoke in China at a convention, I got the Pimsleur course and just did their elementary beginners course for Mandarin. Because I wanted to be able to show respect to my host and be able to. So I actually did the first paragraph in Mandarin, which for me was a big thing. And when I met the host and the different people there, I could say enough that they knew that I had. So I knew that the Pimsleur course was very good. But I decided to go for the whole thing on this. So about almost a year ago now, I guess 3/4 of a year ago, I started their series, and I just completed the whole thing finally. And I'd say I'm at less than an intermediate level in terms of a conversation. But what it will take is me going somewhere for a week or 2 or 3. And even though I don't like to travel, in fact, that's why I speak less now than I ever did. That's something I know I'm going to have to do if I really want to master it, and I do. So that's my one thing, because I love the Spanish language, and at 60 years old, I figured, you know what, it's time I finally could speak it fluently instead of just, a little bit.
In Spanish, what is Bob Burg the best in the world at?
Nada. The best in the world? La mejor del mundo? Nada.
Good answer. That was good.
Es un estudiante continuar.
Wow.
A continuing student.
I only know how to say hola, so that wouldn't have been good for me. After all these books, your 11th book, GoGiver, the GoGiver Influencer, did you learn a lot from the ones before? Like, do you have expectations for this book?
Well, I authored these with John David Mann. So I co-authored these, and John is really the lead writer and storyteller. He's brilliant. I was very lucky to come across John. He was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for years and years ago. So when I came up with the basic idea and concept of the GoGiver, but writing it as a business parable, I knew I couldn't do it justice as I wanted to. So I asked John. John was the only one I wanted to co-author with me on this, and he has just been a joy to work with. He's fantastic. So I learn something every time because I learn from John. He's just, and so, excuse me. So in terms of expectations, we believe this book is going to do very well. The GoGiver itself has sold over 700,000 copies, and it's still going strong. We believe that the GoGiver Influencer, we think the timing is so perfect for it, and there's so much excitement behind it right now. We think it's going to surpass that. In terms of expectations, yeah, I expect that. Am I attached to it? No, I work at not being attached to the outcome. And when you're not attached to the outcome, you're able to enjoy the journey a lot more. And ironically enough, if it is even ironic, when you're not attached to the outcome, the chances are much better that you're going to reach the outcome that you desire.